Thanks for listening to Time Well Spent. I want to tell you about another OhitsBigRon Studios podcast called Leaving the Theater. It's a movie review podcast where I review movies as I'm leaving the theater. You get a raw, unfiltered, unedited reaction from me, and sometimes I even bring guests on to discuss the films with me. We have a lot of fun talking about the hits and misses from Hollywood. Once again, that's Leaving the Theater, and it's available everywhere you get podcasts. Welcome to Time Well Spent. I'm Ronald. In early 2019, I released this episode, Heartbreak, which detailed the journey of three folks who had been in relationships that didn't work out. At the time, people asked me why I did that episode, and I gave kind of a half-hearted answer about learning from the past and reframing the future or something close to that. The truth is, like with most episodes of this show, that episode was born out of something that happened to me. It happened in late 2018. I had been processing feelings after suffering rejection in the very early stages of what I thought would be a great relationship. It fizzled out about a month in. We didn't even become exclusive or anything. I felt sad, and while I knew my heart wasn't actually broken, I was experiencing a deep disappointment due to the expectations I had. Then I started hypothesizing that the root of heartbreak is, in fact, disappointment. We are mourning our expectations. I actually stated a portion of this pretty well in the original version of this episode. That your expectations won't be met. The hardest disappointment to face comes when you fall in love. Love defies our logic and makes it hard to be rational in relationships. I found that while I can adjust quickly through most personal setbacks, the disappointment that comes from the expectations in relationships is a difficult adjustment to make. So to kick off the new year of the show... So I thought there was something to this idea. And in the midst of my sadness, I started crafting the Heartbreak episode. Time well spent on most days has been me processing my feelings or relating to other folks processing their feelings. I've done 22 episodes plus 3 episodes of spare time, and of those 25 episodes, 11 of them deal with rejection in some form. I went back and counted. I know this. And I mean, 2 of the non-rejection based episodes are about my disappointment in the Fast and Furious franchise, so they're not exactly branching out. I think it's safe to say that I don't like being rejected, and much of my life has been a series of attempts to be good enough. So when I made this episode, I really wanted to hear how other people had processed a breakup, disappointment, rejection, and see if through them, I could see a way out. So, why are we here? Why this episode now? Well, I'll answer that question shortly, as well as catch up with my guests to get updates on their lives since the episode aired. But before that, I want to revisit that episode, remastered and remixed for your listening pleasure. I'll let my guests introduce themselves.
My name is Anna. I was married for almost 4 years, but we were in a relationship for almost 8.5 years.
Bree. I dated my ex-boyfriend for almost 3 years.
My name is Andrew, and I was in a serious relationship for 6 months.
I remember sitting in my English class in the back corner of the room, and a couple minutes after class started, Alex walked in, and I was like, whoa, who is that?
He was a bartender at a bar that I regulared. He was actually on his lunch break, and I saw him studying for a Security Plus certification. That's an IT certification, which I had just failed. So I had all these study materials. So I just kind of approached him oh, that's really cool. I didn't know that that's what you were into. And he was bartending because he was going through a career change. So I think the first reason why we kind of clicked is because we both worked in technology. We both had that similar interest. So that was kind of what took it from just being at the bar and me ordering drinks with him to actually getting to know him a little bit more.
I was getting sick and tired of online dating, but I met with someone that we clicked as far as sending each other text messages. The first date I remember clearly. I always enjoy eating, so my biggest thing is let's go get something, grab something to eat, whether pupusas or tacos. And then from there, I kind of I did suggest dancing, since I enjoy that, and she didn't hesitate.
At the end of class, the last day, I was like, I'm going to say something to this guy. I'm going to go up to him and I'm just going to ask him like how he did in class or whatever. But I chickened out and I didn't say anything. So I called my friend up and I was like, what do? I need to talk to this guy. Like we've been sitting next to each other. We've barely talked, but I feel like I need to say something. She was like, do you have his number? No. Well, you have his email address. So I sent him an email and all I said was, hey, do you think you passed the class? And I sent it and immediately I was like, you dork. Like, why would you say something like that? And he responded right away and was like, yeah, I think so. But here's my number. Let's text about it or something like that. And I was like, whoa, okay, well, that worked. And then a week later, we went on our first date. He picked me up. My mom was peeking out the window. I was like, oh my gosh, Mom, don't embarrass me. I mean, it was over the summer, so it started off as a summer love type of thing, which was great.
Every relationship has its own story, an origin story, if you will. Those little things in the beginning that you cherish as love begins to grow. Some call the very beginning the honeymoon phase, that period of time when you never let a text go unanswered, when you're laughing, smiling, and learning all the wonderful new and great things about your person. It wasn't long before Anna, Bree, and Andrew found themselves going from dating to relationship.
I actually specifically remember he just called me his girlfriend in front of one of my friends one time. And like, I was like, oh, well, I guess I'm your girlfriend now. And it just kind of happened really quickly, I guess, because things clicked very quickly. Being a little bit older, I think he was more into, so either we're going to do this or we're not.
So I did have the honest conversation. I asked her, listen, I told her I enjoy my time, spending my time with you. It's obvious that my friends like you. If you haven't noticed, my family likes you as well. But I feel like this could be a potential for something serious moving forward. How do you feel about that? She was like, yeah, dude, like, what do you expect?
I remember the day he asked me to become his girlfriend. He just wrapped his arms around me and he's like, I have to tell you a story. And I was like, okay. And he just started talking about some fantasy princess story, and the way he talked about it, the way he talked about the princess was like I was the princess, and he wanted to treat me like a princess and eventually a queen and blah, 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 blah. So he was like, long story short, pretty much, I would like you to be my girlfriend. I want to be in a relationship with you. I want to treat you like the princess that you are and the way you deserve to be treated. So obviously I said yes.
I think I moved in with him after dating for like 4 or 5 months. There was definitely a spark there that happened very quickly, but also I was already going through some roommate problems and was ready to move out. Our lease was going to be up. So I think it was like, well, if we're dating and we're going to kind of make this a thing, like why not do it? It seemed right at the time. So for me, I had never lived with a significant other before. So that was the first time I did that.
We went to the National Cathedral in DC, and it had just recently snowed, so there was just, snow everywhere, and we went up all the way up to the top, And he's like, oh, I think there's a gazebo out back. Let's go check it out. I'm like, how does he know there's a gazebo out back? So we walk back there and there are two people in the gazebo. And I was like, why does that look like your friend? And he's like, what? I have no idea what you're talking about. I was probably making him more nervous. So I just stopped talking. And then we walk into the gazebo. And then he was like, oh, look up over here. So I looked, and then he stood behind me. And I could hear like ruffling around, like he was moving really quickly. I turned around and there he was on his knee. And he was like, I brought you here because the top of the cathedral is the highest point in the city. And I wanted to show you that I've had my highest and my lowest points with you. And I want to share the rest of my life with you. And then, oh yeah, it turns out it was his friend who was there, and he's a photographer, so he captured the whole thing. So that's how he proposed. And then that was on a Sunday. Then on Tuesday, we went to the courthouse and got married. So we got married right before he left for basic training.
Being in love is a wonderful and warm feeling, especially when it's reciprocal. However, after the honeymoon phase has come and gone, a relationship can become something that doesn't come as naturally as we might like or hope. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. We're managing our own feelings and expectations while also trying to meet the needs of our partners. It's even harder when external forces makes meeting those needs a little bit more difficult.
I got laid off from my job. When I invite my partner on dates, it's in my head that I have to be there supportive of her. And that was a scary thought and process for me. At that point, even worst was when I didn't feel or have the energy to get out of bed. I was questioning my worthiness. At that point, I kept applying for jobs, and each time the same rejection, thank you for applying, or you're too overqualified. That kept eating me inside as a human. And I felt like I was slowly bringing that into my relationship, which I didn't want to.
I think because we got married right before he left for the military, I knew that my life was going to change. I knew that his life was going to change. I just didn't know that his personality was going to change as well. But after he joined the military, he just sort of became more and more and more of a recluse. So he was just shutting down all the time. He wouldn't really talk to me about his feelings. And I mean, he was a very shy person to begin with. But I mean, I would communicate with him all the time how I was feeling, even if it was like the good, the bad, all the in-betweens and everything. And he would just, I think he has a hard time explaining how he feels, to the point where it didn't happen often. So that our expectations of each other was to respect each other, love each other. You know, the basic stuff that you expect out of any relationship. But I would say as soon as he joined the military, he changed.
I think when it became pretty clear that it wasn't going to work was when we had been together for a while, and I started asking, like, hey, you've been taking these classes, you've been interested in this, when are you going to take the step from going from food and beverage and hospitality industry, bartending, to, corporate job, working in technology, whatever he's going to switch into. But I think when it became pretty clear was that he didn't really have like the drive or the ambition to actually make that switch. And I felt like I was really pushing him along the way. And I think what frustrated me was that he was 7 years older. So I always, in every aspect, expected him to act like he was 7 years ahead. But when it comes to his view on, higher education and joining the workforce, it was just very different than mine. I think that was pretty difficult for me because I'm a very ambitious person. I like my job. I like working in the corporate world, and I own a business, so that keeps me really busy. So when other people aren't as involved or in things as I am, that was hard for me to rationalize and see his side a lot. So I think just that made it really difficult.
What hurt me the most on how it ended, I found out through social media. I got a notification on Facebook that we were no longer listed as friends, or that she was following me on Facebook. And I thought that was kind of awkward. I checked my Facebook account. We were no longer connected as friends. Instagram, she had blocked me off Instagram. Snapchat, the same thing. So all form of social media. I called her. It went straight to voicemail, and I called her again. And just the way I'm talking to you is exactly the same way I left her a voicemail message. I told her that I didn't want to assume things, and I want to know exactly what's going on in her head. I called her again. She responded an hour later saying that I have to get up to work early the next day, but I sent you a what's up message. The thing is, I remember it clearly because I kept rereading it over and over and over again. I have it ingrained in my head, and I still have the message on my phone. She felt like the relationship was becoming toxic, that she didn't appreciate the way that we've been arguing the last couple of weeks, that at the end of the day, that I hope that I become the person that I was when we initially dated. And at that point in time, someone with financial stability, right? Someone without that much worries going on. And that as much as she cared about me, she knew that this message would hurt me. That at the end of the day, she loves herself, even though she does care about me. But she felt like this is the way she had to go about it as far as a breakup. And that there was no point in me trying to pursue her because she was not going to change her mind. And I left it at that because at that point, I'm not going to persist or be persistent with someone that doesn't want to be with you.
He definitely brought it up. He was much more vocal to bring up things than I was. He was able to recognize kind of how I was acting a lot. So he made it easier to kind of have that conversation because it wasn't like I felt like I had to bring something up. He kind of already sensed it and then would kind of start that conversation. It was that Thanksgiving that we still went on another trip together when it was what kind of felt like a last ditch effort almost. And then we had a great time. And then we came back and we didn't have any more conversations. And then, after when you kind of pretend like things are okay, I feel like it unravels even faster after. So the next fight was just, huge. But I remember the one where we actually decided to break up and he was acting weird. I think it was after his birthday. He just seemed very distanced the next day. And it was well, what's going on? I just planned this awesome birthday. And, he was we need to break up. He was I don't think you love me. And he was just sitting there on his laptop. And I was well, we can't just have this conversation because we have 2 cats and a dog together. We live together. And we have lived together for about 2 years. So this is going to have to be a more in-depth conversation than just you being angry or annoyed and saying you want to break up. And he was actually on his laptop typing up a list of things that he owned in the house and things that I owned in the house. So before we even actually broke up, he had already started preparing for him to be moving out.
I remember, because I noticed that there was something wrong, I remember trying to do things that would make him feel better. So, I would cook for him. I would, drop baths for him and just help him relax. I tried to do things that he would enjoy and be appreciative of, but he just didn't really show that he was appreciative of those things. I think he just thought of them as basic stuff, but he was just fading more and more and more. And I think the last thing that I tried to do, because we didn't have a wedding, so we didn't have a honeymoon, and almost 4 years into our marriage, so that's, over 8 years of being together, I was like, we should go on a trip. So I found a really great deal for a cruise. It left out of Baltimore. It was a 9-day cruise. I was like, great, this is going to be like the honeymoon we never had. And I think it was a big try for me and for him. He later told me that it was more like a test because he felt like he didn't want to stay married anymore. And I think I was just trying to do everything to make it work. And he was testing me at this point, which sucks because I didn't know I was being tested. And just, a month or two before, he was away for training for a whole month. And he would text me all the time about how much he wanted to be with me and how happy he is that he has me and how supportive I am of everything. But during our trip, he just wanted to stay in the room the whole time. He brought his video game with him and was just playing, and he didn't want to go swimming or do whatever. And I'm like, we spent this money to enjoy our trip, and all you want to do is stay in the room and play your game. And he, at one point, he actually wanted to leave early and was looking up how to get out of the trip. And I was like, oh my gosh. So that made me really upset. And I think, well, that night when we got back, that was when I talked to him because I noticed how he was being. And I just said, I noticed that you've been different. And on this trip, you would isolate yourself and you didn't really want to be with me. So what's going on? And he wasn't talking as usual. He wasn't really communicating with me. So I had to say, do you think we'll stay together? And he said, no. So that was it. I wasn't going to beg him to stay. If he had already made his mind up, there was nothing I can do to change it. And I tried for months to make sure that he was okay. So if he was serious about it, then that meant that he had thought about it for a while, and even though he didn't tell me, and that I just had to accept and respect his decision and move on.
There are times I do reminisce about the relationship that I had before, but I look at myself to see exactly where I am now, whether physically and mentally, and I'm doing better because I'm seeking the assistance that I need. And once again, going to my therapist, right? That's an important part of the process. Doing the things that I enjoyed doing before, doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu on my own, playing soccer again, going out dancing. These are things that I enjoyed doing for myself, that really I'm taking care of me. And that's an important part that I felt like I didn't because I gave that other person too much of my time. It's not a bad thing. But once again, it's always good to have what you did prior to that relationship and to continue having that individual self. Not to say that's selfish, but it's self-care.
It helped me kind of realize like what I actually do want out of a relationship and what I don't want. And it's not things that he had or didn't have or things that I wanted or didn't want, but it kind of made me realize like what was important to me and, how do I find those traits in a person and how am I perceiving myself and how do I make sure I'm clearly, communicating what I would want out of something and how do I make sure that I'm, I never asked him, how are you feeling? Or I never asked him, well, why do you want this out of life? Or why don't you enjoy this? So I wish that I could help the other person, vocalize their feelings as well. Because it's easier, I think, when someone else is asking you than when you have to be upfront about it. So not only being more upfront myself, but also being that person to, really initiate the conversation and see how the other person's feeling a lot.
now, a little over a year later, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm dating. I'm going on dates. I think it's a little different, but I'm getting to know people beyond just like the surface level stuff. And if something doesn't feel right, or if, you know, a guy just isn't right for me, I can just be like, okay, great, we can be friends, but this is it. Like, I don't have to immediately become boyfriend and girlfriend with the first guy I date.
A lot has changed in the time since I published this episode. Originally, I was experiencing a deep sense of disappointment. Not quite heartbreak, but the mildest form of it. However, back then, as I produced this episode, things had begun to change for me. That new relationship that fizzled out, she changed her mind. We started hanging out regularly, and about 2 weeks after I released this episode, we became official. Now, it was by no means perfect, but it was as great as I imagined it would be. I was proud to be her boyfriend, and she made me happy. We went on trips, we watched shows, we cooked, we went to a wedding, we did all the relationship things. We even did the pandemic together. Until this past September, when she changed her mind again. Like Bree's partner, I had to bring up the difficult conversation. Like Anna, I realized I was slowly losing my relationship. And like Andrew, I watched her close the door hard and knew that she wouldn't change her mind again. It hurt. It still hurts. And this time, it wasn't just disappointment. I now know what it means to be heartbroken. So I'm in a bit of a tailspin right now, and honestly, I can't really see my future. Everything feels uncertain, and even the best parts of my life feel less good. So I thought revisiting this episode would be good for me, not only to hear from folks who have been through it, but I thought we could hear updates from them to see where their lives took them since the episode originally published.
Okay, can you hear me, see me?
Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
Okay, can you see me? Okay, cool.
I caught up with Bree and Anna via Zoom. They are in very different places since their respective breakups. Anna is now nearly 4 years removed from her divorce. She is still adjusting to and enjoying her independence and stability. She says she feels a lot more like herself than she has in a long time.
I gave up a lot to make that relationship work. For a lot of military families, you move every couple of years, but because of the situation that we were in, it was every 10, 11 months we moved. So I never had time to just take a breather. I've had time to live on my own. I've been working at the same place. I've been, talking to the same friends, and that makes me feel more like me.
Bree is happily in a relationship with Mike, who chimed in when I asked Bree the status of her romantic life.
This past weekend was actually our 2-year anniversary. We've now been living together for how long? All of quarantine, whatever time period that is. Yeah. But he's like, he very quickly established his space in my house in which he moved into. I don't know how to put where are we?
I mean, but trying to get engaged sometime soon. That's probably the next step, within the next
direct.
I mean, I call it what it is. So yes, that'll be the next step, hopefully within the next sometime. Sooner around the corner, I would say. So I would say that's where we are.
Bree went on to talk about the ways in which this relationship moved differently than her past relationship and how that looked in practice.
I think in certain things I was willing to move quickly. I think we established our relationship really quickly, got to know my family's local. So he got to know my family very quickly, which is important to me. And so there were some things that, from my prior relationship, like that I maybe hadn't done before that I was okay with, but certain things like moving in together was something that I was more hesitant on and he was more open to because he hadn't done that in a past relationship. So I think that was like probably the only thing that maybe we were at some point on different pages. And it was strictly because of my prior relationship. I think living with someone and then moving apart somewhat, it seems like a failure, right? Like that relationship failed. And like, that's a very public announcement of your relationship.
Uncoupling, if you will.
Yeah, uncoupling. Very public uncoupling, right? Like you guys moved out.
Failure and public failure is something I think about a lot, especially in relationships. Societally, we treat relationships as a measure of success and celebrate every milestone from a successful date until we say, I do. While I would never want to rain on anyone's parade, I do think that when you're in a relationship that ends and ending was not what you wanted, it's fairly difficult to look at the folks in seemingly happy relationships around you and not feel like a failure. For me, it becomes a constant barrage of negative self-talk and rationalizing all the reasons why no one will want to be in a relationship with me. When you deeply love someone and lose them for any reason, one of the hardest things to do is to accept that it's really over. The same rationalization that I use to justify why I'm not good enough becomes a list of ways I can make myself good enough for the next person, or good enough to bring the last person back. Anna talks a little bit about what it looks like to hope for reconciliation and the realization that it won't happen.
Well, up until the summer, I still, in the back of my mind and in a small place in my heart, I thought that in the future, we would still be able to reconcile years from now or whatever the case could be. And that he was my person, that we would get back together, that I may have for the most part moved on and he probably did as well, but that eventually one way or another, we would find our way back to each other. Through some inner work and finding out some things, I realized that that will never happen. He is not my person. He is in a better place without me, and I'm in a better place without him. That was the closure that I needed. I think we're both better off going our own separate paths.
I asked Anna what it was like to finally let go of a person and of the hopes that anything would be revived or reconciled.
It's freeing. It feels really nice to not have anything connecting you to that person anymore. You may have had a past, but there's nothing in the present moment, in the future, that holds you to that person anymore. So you can make your own decisions without thinking, is this person going to be okay with me making that decision? Or when you see a stupid video on Instagram and you want to share it, you don't think of that person anymore. You can share it with your other friends, or if you have a new person that you're interested in, share it with that person. It's little things like that that just feel so freeing.
It's hard to imagine feeling that free right now. In a lot of ways, I've accepted that it's over. I found other people to share memes and videos with. I've split the duties of the first phone call. You know, that person you call first with your most important news. I split it amongst several friends and family members. But in some ways, I haven't accepted that it's over. There's an empty drawer in my house right now that I can't bring myself to put stuff in just in case she needs space for her things on an overnight visit. An overnight visit that likely won't ever happen again. As I was looking to stories of heartbreak as a means to find out how people move on, Bree and Anna shared some encouraging parting words that I found helpful.
I don't think I envisioned like my life partner as being a picture of a certain person. It was just, I want that space to be fulfilled. And like when I met Mike, it was just easy. And I never thought about who filled that spot before. So hopefully that's helpful for you. Like you feel like you can't get past it, but you can.
So time, honestly, when it comes to love, it doesn't really make a difference. I don't think you move on or you don't move on at your own pace. So when people tell you it'll take you half the time that you were together to move on, I think that's BS. So it takes you however long you need.
Special thanks to Anna Lucas, Bree Hanafin, and Andrew Robles, who I was unable to get for a follow-up, but is currently happily in a relationship. Thank you all for sharing your stories with me. This episode was originally made in partnership with Juliet Heinley at The Listen In, a new residency and resource for creative audio makers. To learn more about the residency, visit thelistenin.org. That's TheListeninn.org. I am not okay. I look normal, but I'm not. As a matter of fact, I don't think I'll ever really be normal again. I'm in my head about sharing my feelings with folks because I don't want to hear platitudes anymore, and I've gotten really good at faking like I'm okay. People tell me things will get better with time, but I honestly think we just get better at faking normal over time. I remember when my ex stopped talking to me, one of the things she said was, we have to get used to the new normal, which for her was us not talking. I've hated that phrase ever since then because not talking to someone I love and want to talk to is not normal for me. I think I hate normal. I think I don't believe in normal, and I don't think any of us should believe in normal. And I'll tell you why. Next time on Time Well Spent. Time Well Spent is a production of OhitsBigRon Studios with help from associate producer Lizzie Peabody. Theme and additional music by the mysterious Breakmaster Cylinder, and even more additional music from the artist DT. Outro music from Michael Cordy. If you like the show, please leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. That helps us find our way to the ears of new listeners. If you really want to support us, then consider becoming a patron of the show by visiting patreon.com/OhitsBigRon. That's patreon.com/OhitsBigRon. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at OhitsBigRon. That's at OhitsBigRon. If you like this show, check out our sister show that reviews movies, Leaving the Theater. Thanks for listening to Time Well Spent, the podcast that nobody asked for, yet somebody is listening to. We'll be back soon.
When do I talk about the cheese thing?
I don't even know if we're going to get there. Good God. All right.
I think going from bartender to boyfriend, I expected like way more free drinks and free food, but I'm just kidding. Don't say that.
Hey guys, my name is Andrew Robles. No.
Cut the hey guys.
All right. Like this is like a serious conversation.
Or I'll just hold it very gracefully.
Just don't spill it.
Just don't spill it. But you know what? I feel like if I do, it'll just add for, dramatic effect. It'll be great.
So you think you're the producer now?
No. I'm trash. That's not cool, Ronald. But you know that I'm a very, somewhat creative person. I try to be.
All right.
Yes.
So